We're going to have a chat with Kosta. He does a lot of work in anti-terrorism initiatives on both a domestic and international level. We met about two and a bit years ago at a place called Junket, and all of a sudden we've stayed connected over a number of years. He also goes quite personal. He used to be 170 kilos, and he goes deep around what the transition was from going from 170 down to 90 kilos. I've never met someone who's lost 80 kilos, and he talks around, you know, that was a journey of the last 5 years, and he talks about that a bit. He goes vulnerable. So tune in, listen up, and enjoy. All right, so we're here with Kosta for Yarn number 2.
That's right.
And so Kosta and I, we met at Junkie.
Yes.
So Junkie.
Or Junket.
Oh wait, it was a Junket.
Junket hosted by Junkie.
That's right,
Yeah.
and it was a Junket.
What year was that?
It was a Junket, wasn't it? 2016.
It was a bit of a Junket.
2016.
Yeah, 2016 or 2017?
2017? Yeah, 2017.
I think it's 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. And in Canberra.
Yes.
Where they got a bunch of people together from all around the country to talk about what kind of, it was...
Wasn't the label was sort of innovators and influencers
and disruptors,
and everyone was equally as skeptical of being there because we were like, no one wants to be that label, and then we were like, oh, we all feel that way, and maybe we just have to own it, I suppose. Yeah.
And then
it was awesome.
And then we all had the opportunity, if we had an idea that we wanted to share with everyone.
So it was a 2-day unconference.
That's right.
Where we all nominated a workshop to put together. Then they had the task of scheduling us over the 2 days, and then we got to self-select into those workshops over the course of a few days.
For me, that was when I first moved over to the East Coast.
That's right, I remember.
And it was fantastic for me to meet, you know, just a bunch of people who I wouldn't have met.
And you didn't get the chance to meet everyone you would have wanted, but I mean, and I was just saying before that even with yourself, we didn't get the chance to really hang out while we were there, but we decided that we should stay in touch. And then we reconnected when the time was right. So it was interesting because you're just kind of in the room with all these people that you probably got a lot in common with. There's 200 people there, so you didn't get a chance to meet everyone. But you're like, hey, you had some interesting stuff going on, let's stay in touch, and the rest was history.
And I think that's really cool how those conferences, you know, maybe not the instant manifestation or whatever comes out of the outcome, whatever you want, if you're going there with a work hat on. But then the beauty of going and investing time into the 2-day program, course, or whatever it is, it's actually like this network that you do build. And how it could come up in different lights.
And the thing is, like, we all work in different spaces, and then invariably, if you're doing more grassroots-oriented work, or even you're doing advisory work, and someone needs more expertise in a particular area that's out of your wheelhouse, I'll know someone that is a specialist in that area because of stuff like this, and that's amazing.
I like that use of word wheelhouse. That's what
that's great.
Oh god, with my dad jokes. Can we share a quote that you very deeply, profound quote that you have?
A quote that I've inadvertently tried to live by. I can't say I'm always faithful to it. Is speak softly and carry a big stick, which is really just about speaking with meaning and with authority, and just meaning what you say. So. Not just filling the space with sound, but to make sure that whatever I say is meaningful and has impact in a way that I'm comfortable with and can live with. So, I don't always do it, but it's something I remind myself of to augment my worldview or just the way I'm behaving in any particular moment. Unlike right now, which is I'm just speaking to fill space.
It was just so much was happening for me, and I had this image of someone who speaks softly and a big stick. It's Gandalf.
That's true. Except when he's screaming, you shall not pass.
A couple of times you're going to put that stick down and be strong with your words.
That's right. It's just about speaking with, I see that more as about speaking with dignity and intention. So not just having an opinion for the sake of having an opinion, and given my work, that's so prevalent, I think, and tempting. Like, I think it's a very human thing, but it's just about being deliberate and being thoughtful.
Man, I love that you brought that up, because I can't, like, I felt that there was a bit of a tipping point in me in my adulthood. Was kind of, you know, a lot of people probably say I talk too much still, but believe it or not, I've actually slowed down a little bit.
Sure.
At times when people hook me in,
Yeah.
when you rise up to that and you speak like that, it pulls me up to speak like that.
Yeah.
And I think it lifts the whole room. And I can't, when I've been having the privilege to be able to attend some, the people I feel, like some people I feel live up to that so strongly, is when I've gone to some of these gatherings of Indigenous organisations and cultural leaders on country and community, and you go there and it's about being content with that, the space and silence, and then actually allowing people to sit with that.
Yeah. Silence is really scary when you don't know what to do with it, or if you just don't know how to sit in it. And but it has some of the most telling bits of personal information, I think, sometimes. So you really just, even if you're uncomfortable with it, it's something to pay attention to, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good lesson. Good, ancient wisdom.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
So with that, with ancient wisdom, so you pull like a lot of your strength to do the work that you do from your ancestry, from all that. So
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, just as background, so I'm an independent researcher / practitioner in the field of countering violent extremism, preventing violent extremism, building resilience to violent extremism, and I've worked in the policy program and research space, and I've straddled that space for about 9 years.
Yeah.
So really, I'm not looking at the security side, I'm looking more at the community side of, you know, the impact of terrorism on communities, as well as how people enter or leave those organisations, or just divisive narratives and what impact that has on communities generally. So it's pretty broad, sort of kind of sociological kind of work.
Yeah.
Forgot the question that.
No, you just kind of, I think it was great, you kind of gave everyone a bit of the 101 of what you do.
Yeah.
But then, so say that's the concept, so then who are the kind of people who engage you in your services?
Yeah, I mean, it really, I think because of that independent role that I've inhabit, and because of my experience in those different spaces, I'll work with universities, I'll work with community organisations, community leaders as they need the help, even social media companies as well, about how their platforms are being used and how they can also create a better user experience for people as well, and you know, giving some pretty frank advice about how those platforms are being used, and also the role of counter-narrative campaigns and counter-messaging campaigns, what works and what doesn't. And yeah, it's an ongoing conversation with all those different parts, and I'm trying to make all those civil society, social media and big tech, governments, academia, I'm trying to connect those organically by what I'm doing. So that's the big goal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm working quite across a few different spaces.
So
in that area.
And you're able to do that. You're able to be nimble with all of them.
Yeah, that's why I'm
independent.
independent. Because I get to just deploy at a moment's notice to whatever needs to be done. So it's good, but it's tough working by yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you would know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Oh, totally. And I guess that we'll talk about that a little bit later. But one thing I remember we caught up the other day, you were talking about you actually working with a group of young people in WA.
Yeah. Yes, that's
share some light on that?
Yeah. So this is an initiative that's being run by the Australian Multicultural Foundation at the moment, and it's about creating communities of young cross-cultural leaders, I suppose, that want to address a particular issue of importance that as they've identified it. So 12 young leaders were selected from the community here, from different community groups, whether it's culturally and linguistic or even neurodiverse as well, or other identity groups, I suppose. We all did a 2-day training thing together, and then after that we kind of sat down and hashed out, all right, what's an issue that kind of connects all of us that we think needs to be addressed? So the issue that we all identified was the taboo of mental health for young people, beg your pardon, in culturally and linguistically diverse communities.
Yeah, right.
So, you know, I think I've said this before, but mental health's tough to talk about at the best of times. What we notice and what we've known is that in CULT communities, there's a compounding influence of that. So, and a lot of the young leaders in the group felt that there was some stigma that was still really hampering some pretty important things that need to happen, like help seeking and talking to people about it. It was getting in the way, and there was some pretty terrible outcomes that were happening as a result. So we're going to run a community conversation initiative over the next couple of months, specifically for young people in different local government areas, which will then build to a showcase for those findings for community leaders and service providers from around the state. So
to give them better ideas, insights.
So what we want to do is not necessarily just have the young people come up with a solution themselves, because really that's where structures are so important, but just to speak directly to power about, hey, this is what we need. This is something that we feel is missing, or if you want to engage people in our communities more, because we've seen this as an issue and there's a disconnect, here's some ways that you can do that. You know, so here's where we are. It's kind of what is saying.
Fantastic.
So yeah, it's really cool. And the group that I'm working with, they're just so awesome. So there's that double benefit of that. So yeah, watch this space.
Well, what I'm hearing a lot, and I love that, what I'm finding from 10, 15 years ago, and I guess the generation before us, with this whole idea of, we're rolling out this government initiative for young people. A lot of this stuff is just done because this is what young people need.
Yes.
And to hear, you being engaged as someone who can be expert in this field, who can actually connect across cultural barriers, whatever, and create a safe space for people to truly get that insight. For one, getting you to do that, and then secondly, to supporting you to facilitate this, and then pivoting and then saying, right, to get more of a collective view, let's roll this out throughout the state. And it just shows, I feel, a lot of maturity in government. To actually do that. It's not ideal. There's still a lot of problems out there.
Of course.
But it just goes.
It shows growth. You know? And this is this is a federal initiative as well. So I'm the Perth local coordinator. They've got a thing going in each state. So which is really cool, because each state will then work on their own issue. We'll come together in Canberra, and then we'll present what each of us has done. So then someone in Sydney might be doing a completely different area, for example. But it's all around the same cluster of ideas around building community resilience, because resilience is just about that bounce back factor, that ability to transform external influences, to heal trauma, to transform it, all that stuff. So, we just identified this specific issue because of the skill sets that we had, the things that we care about, the experiences that we all bring. That's just where our heart was as a collective group. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what everyone else is doing in the other states, and hopefully, it's something that can keep happening, because it's such a cool youth work, or youth engagement, I should say. I can't call myself a youth worker. Youth engagement really should be that sort of like with youth for youth kind of model. Like you can't, or by youth for youth, or with youth for youth. It tends to be sort of just kind of for youth a lot of the time. So actually building a meaningful place for them to be able to decide what's important, to decide on the strategy, to create that room for even experimentation and failure as well, because it happens, and it builds their own resilience too, is really important. So kudos to that particular type of initiative. I'm all for it.
And then before we get into your will, Mike, you've also recently just come back from this amazing dialogue in New Zealand. So tell us about that.
So I was invited to participate in reality testing the Christchurch call to action that Jacinda Ardern made post the March 15 attacks in Christchurch. And it was just an opportunity for social media companies, civil society organisations, government representatives, and other sort of interested individuals from across the world to come together for 2 days and reality test how this protocol would work. So there's a lot of details there that I can't get into, but there'll be some stuff released about it. And I was just there representing a civil society perspective, which was like such an enormous privilege. And it was really underrepresented in the room, and that was a really big, and that was for various reasons. It's not that there weren't efforts made to be inclusive, it was just by virtue of timing and other commitments, there was a real...
And resources, were they supported to go?
No, we were fully supported to go. Right. So I think it just speaks to the sort of the competing commitments that a lot of civil society groups have in order to be able to attend stuff like this. So, there were lots of reasons, I suppose. And so, to have the mantle of civil society from an Australian perspective anyway was huge, because what I do is more about watering the grassroots than being the grassroots myself.
Yeah.
So I work with NGOs, but I'm not necessarily always the one at the coalface. There's a lot of people doing that work. So it was just, I saw it as my responsibility to represent that as best I could, based on the experiences I've learned from other people that I've worked with for the last almost 10 years now. So yeah, it was amazing. It was just such a strange but awesome experience.
Obviously it's a real honour to do that, and they pick you because you're bloody good at what you do.
Thank you. I hope so.
One of the things that's kind of come up, because you've got a bunch of different listeners, the goal is for the iyarn this podcast, and being a bit of an expert in this space, and a bit of few and far between. I don't know too many.
Yeah.
You're probably
I've always been so uncomfortable with that word expert, and literally it's only because I've been in that space for longer than most people, I think, from a young age. I'm only 33.
Yeah. So
I've really been in the violent extremism space since 24. Okay. But I was a young person in government, and then I moved out of that after 2 years and started to try and forge my own path. But I've been exposed to the issues from a policy perspective and a research perspective for the better part of those years. And I've been lucky enough to traverse different spaces. It's not like I'm just community, I'm just this, which are all very important. It's just I've been able to collect those experiences, and hopefully that shows in my work. So there's no formal discipline either, because it's multidisciplinary. Yeah. You've got to learn from your social workers, you've got to learn from your national security people, you've got to learn from your community development people. There's a place and a space for everyone in a social issue like violent extremism. And also the nature of the problem is different to what it was before the September 11 sort of attacks. We forget that the nature of the space changed completely after the Twin Tower attacks. So it's a really evolving, still maturing space. And
what I was leading to is so you work a lot of this policy level up here.
Yeah.
But then you've also got this kind of semi-grassroots conversations with young people.
Yeah.
But then I guess there's this other big pocket of Australians or people in the world who don't necessarily understand or engage, because it's maybe they probably have views about it.
Yeah. Oh man, tell me about it.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
But is it kind of if people are listening to this, it's I actually haven't, I heard about it on the news.
Yeah.
But is it something that people can or when I say people, Anglo-Saxon people who are not really necessarily engaged with the dialogue?
I think that's something we're still catching up on in terms of mainstreaming the conversation. I tell you what though, my informal conversations with people from Uber drivers to my barbers or whatever, we'll have wildly different opinions. The values that are connecting us are kind of similar though. It's just we've got really different experiences and really different, different experiences and different opinions on how to get to a similar place. But most people appreciate just having the space to actually talk about it. It's become a really scary, polarizing thing to talk about, and it's a very emotional space too. It's particularly, if you're from one of the Muslim communities, and this is having some serious effects for them on the ground, in terms of how they're being treated, and instances of Islamophobia are on the rise, and and whatnot. But just trying to think of the way to put this. People just appreciate being able to express themselves and be seen, and once they felt like they've been understood and they've been seen as a whole person, then you can go on that journey with them in terms of teaching them what the actual way of the world actually is in this stuff, and engage with the more objective point of view. So I like to create that subjective point of view, and conversation is usually the best way for that to happen. So, I'm very passionate about creating those spaces for those people to be themselves, while still having respect for the people around them, but enough that you can get a sense of who they are, and then you turn that into a collective pursuit for the truth of whatever you're trying to learn more about. So it's a challenge, but it's awesome. To be able to do that is just amazing.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. And I think it's one of the challenging things with the mainstream Australia, or someone who's not actively living, breathing this. It's where do you start with this? And I think what I kind of summary of what you're saying is really it's about being willing to step in,
Yeah.
to have a conversation,
Yeah.
and to truly listen.
Yes.
And something that kind of came up when you're talking about this idea that we are kind of connected through these like universal values potentially. Like
Potentially, yeah.
there's some of these ideas that
There's something there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think being willing to try to find that place to connect. Or we love family.
Yeah.
You know, or what, and then broad out from there.
Or we're all scared about our survival on some level, you know? And like group identity is such a big part of feeling protected, you know? So, and you can see it in the way we talk about a whole bunch of social issues that plague any community at the moment, particularly English-speaking, quote-unquote developed world kind of places like Australia, where we're talking about vaccines, we're talking about the climate, we're talking about terrorism. These are all safety issues at the end of the day. And if you have I haven't done the formal research on this yet, so this is just a hypothesis, but like there are very clear things, at least from where I'm sitting, about how we talk about these issues, how we disagree on these issues. So it's important to be able to seize or try and identify the common values and at least start there. Like conflict is good if it's had properly. It's about trying to develop more of a conflict culture around these ideas, but with this shared understanding, like, hey, we still live and breathe and share the same space. We still got, like, whether people like it or not, like, community is for everyone, not just the people we like or are similar to. So, you know, what is the thing that is kind of, what is that social fabric that's uniting all of us? It's there. Like, I guess I'm buoyed by that belief that it's there. You just got to renew the focus on it, I think. So I'll seize any opportunity to do that if I can. Yeah.
I think that's a real nice little segue into yarning and being this idea around conversation.
Yeah, tell me about it.
And we might open up your little iyarn here and have a bit of an iyarn yarn.
Go for it.
So, you know, what I like how we do this is, you know, you've got some areas that are quite high.
Yes.
And then you've got some areas that aren't as high.
Yeah.
So friends and family, talk to me about that.
I'm like the luckiest person in the world when it comes to friends and family, honestly. I'm very close with my immediate family, mum, dad, brother and sister. I'm the youngest by 10 years in my family too, so I'm still the baby. Yeah, the surprise, as I'm called, not the accident. So I'm really lucky. Like, we've been through a lot as a collective, as every family does, I guess. But yeah, we've had some trying times recently. You know, even yesterday, one of my favourite aunts is really unwell, and she got unwell really suddenly. So I effectively went and said goodbye to her yesterday. Even though, you know, we're not counting her out just yet, but, you know, she's slipping away. And, you know, to be able to have a family that was collectively hurting by that, but also propping each other up, I just think to myself, like, oh my God, how lucky am I to have that sort of protective net around me. You know, we're all going through stuff, and, you know, she's like my mum's best friend. So my concern is mum. And she's, you know, she's stoic as ever because she feels like she has to be, but it's kind of amazing to feel that supported, that we can sort of be the full extent of ourselves, of however we're feeling at that moment. So my family is, even when we wildly disagree, even on a values basis sometimes, there's just something there that is just inalienable, I think, and I feel so lucky that I've got that. So yeah, family and friends is the same. Like, I'm in a situation in my life where 9 times out of 10 on a friendship level, I'm surrounded by people that genuinely know me, that genuinely love me. Like, I feel like a very loved person in that sense. So, but I realize that's not everyone's experience. So all that really makes me want to do is help people find that within their own lives too, because it's really helped me through some really hard personal times as well. So yeah, it's cool because I've got friends that also really respect my just different rhythm with life too, like, because I've veered between lots of different things, and I've never really had a linear path doing anything, so, and I've never been judged for that, and that's been really cool. Even if I've been challenged or questioned on it, It comes from a place of respect and care, and I'll always connect to someone's sincerity more than, a poorly phrased question about what I'm doing or whatever it is. So I again, that comes from years of just building those relationships. Like I've got friends to this day that I've known since I was 5, and I'll talk to at least every week. And we're all getting older, people are having kids, people are advancing their careers or having a massive sea change. But for some reason we still stay connected, and it's just the most special thing ever. To the point where I'm so afraid of losing it one day. And seeing my aunt in the state that she's in really reminds you like life's precious. And I'm so glad that she has the privilege to be where she's at, where she's just surrounded by people who love her all the time. And I love her too. Like she's my favorite aunt. So you kind of just want that for, I don't know, I see that and I'm like, this is how it should be. Like, death is one of those things that's inevitable and comes for us all. What I'm fighting for at the end of the day is to just cut out the unnecessary parts, that make that unnecessary suffering, I suppose. Very Buddhist. But for people to die with dignity, to die with people who love them around them, to have those relationships throughout their lives that really sustain us and hopefully build us to a better version of ourselves, I think too. So super lucky in that regard.
Nice.
Very,
Well, I guess that's a bit of a rock. So do you find that doesn't really move too much?
I would say it really doesn't. That's a big constant for me. And even when it's been a source of contention for me, conflict is inevitable in every part of your life. So I have had times where I've had been at loggerheads with my family or with friends about stuff, and you're just like, oh, this is going to be the relationship ending fight that we have. But it's just like, when you actually sit back and think about it, you're like, man, we have so much goodwill to fall back on and to sort of recontextualize whatever it is we're fighting about. That this really isn't that paradigm shifting kind of fight. Like this is a pretty good fight to have at all things being considered.
I really love what you're saying there, and you've got so much context. And I think this is the deep and meaningful family, friend connections. But that doesn't just happen though.
No.
That happens from years and years.
Years of rupture and repair,
Rupture and repair.
Yeah.
And a willingness to get back to heal.
It's hard. Again, because I've never been in a situation where I've been hurt deliberately by people, so, or at least as far as I know anyway. So, and not from the friends that I still have, where it's just because there's not an abusive dynamic. There's I'm in relationships of sort of, where people see, not eye to eye, but just we're on the same level, so there's no weird power dynamics or anything like that. It's just very everyone is the fullest extent of themselves. They clash, they resolve, if things don't work out, you have a break, you come back. It's just one of those things where it's there's a strong magnetic or gravitational pull between those that I care about and care about me, that it can withstand some of those tougher times that life throws at you. So it's cool, so lucky. I thank myself every day for it. Yeah.
So then let's, these areas are other ones. So these, that getting a bit, part of the idea of connecting is being a bit vulnerable.
Yep.
So do you feel like these areas that aren't as strong, do you talk to the family and friends about them?
Yeah, so I've got work and health as the parts that are a bit lower. And I think I made the comment in the wheel that it's not because I'm unhappy with it, it's just because there's so much room to grow. I feel like I should always be doing more, or that I'm never quite content with what I'm doing. Because again, work-wise, I work by myself mainly, so it's always a hustle. I always want to be connected to work that I think is meaningful in some way too, so I don't want to haul myself out. But, sometimes it's really hard that you just don't, if I'm going to be that sort of picky about what I do, then, the opportunities are a bit less, but that's okay. That's still it's a problem of choice rather than circumstance. So it's just this feeling that even I can never seem to settle down from stuff. I'm always on. So there's just this idea that even when it's my time to relax, I'm like, should I be doing a lot more? I should be doing this, I should be doing that. So I do put a lot of pressure on myself. And health has always been a big thing for me, actually, because I think I have told you this before, but I used to be an extremely overweight person, and I have been for the most of my life. 5 years ago, I had gastric sleeve surgery. So I lost 80 kilos in a year. I came down from 170 to 90 in a year.
Wow.
Without even trying. It was just, they remove 70% of your stomach and then you just adapt to that. So it was this massive adjustment. And you know, like I've come in and out of depression and anxiety for 15 years for most of my life too. I've been in some really dark places, like to the point where I think about some pretty heavy stuff constantly, and I just thought that was the norm. And again, that's why my friends and family were so important, because thankfully doing something dangerous was never even though I thought about it a lot, it was never really a reality for me, because I had such strong social connections, you know. So health for me, yeah, so all those things kind of meshed together really, and then it all changed quite significantly 5 years ago when I had that surgery. And you know, you get part of yourself back, but then you also realize that part of you is completely changed by that. So part of you changes, part of you stays the same. So 5 years out, you know, is kind of the time where you start to put weight back on again. You realize like, hey, I actually have to put in the hard work now, which means you have to confront some of the bad habits and the things that got you to that place in the first place, which is really challenging. So, you know, like I've had surgery to remove excess skin already, and that's quite expensive. So, but I've still got a lot more to go. So there's kind of just this feeling of like, no matter what I change, like I'm always going to find something wrong with myself too. And I just want to I don't want to be an Adonis. I just want to not have like, I don't want to look like a melted candle when I take my shirt off. Like that's how I think about it. So, you know, I'm like, is that too much to ask? But yeah, so there's always that struggle of kind of being good to my body, but at the same time learning, you know, confronting some of the pretty destructive habits that I used to have.
What were some of these habits?
I would say that it was some pretty unhealthy attitudes towards eating, and just to myself that made those habits possible. And you know, people are all shapes and sizes for a number of reasons, and people deserve to love themselves, whatever their shape is, you know, at any stage of their life. I was just in that position where I was really overweight, and I knew it was because of the way I was treating my body. And the way I was treating my body was because of some pretty gross things I've believed about myself, and you know, like pretty poor self-esteem. But I was very good at bluffing at the same time, so I was kind of high functioning-ish. But the wheels started to fall off as I was getting older. You know, and again, it was my friends who told me to go speak to a professional, because I had never thought about it before until about 10 years ago. So, you know, I had all those good influences, and you know, my 20s just kind of sucked, to be honest. It was in a very dissociated kind of way, where I just was going through the motions. I was going through a law degree I hated, you know, all that stuff. Like I just, it's a bit of a blow, to be honest. Like everything before 30 is just kind of like, it feels really foreign. But now as I'm hitting 34 in a month, those things are stuck. You realize that wiring in your brain is still there. Yeah. So being confronted with that again is still kind of like, oh shit, I've done well. Like I've done well since that time, but I've got a long way to go. Yeah. I've got to do some pretty heavy sort of self-work in order to just feel and be the healthiest that I possibly can be. So yeah, trying not to lose sight of my progress, because it's been significant.
I've never met someone who's lost that much weight.
Well, I mean, yeah, look, I mean, I wish I could say I was trying. It was just like literally 70% of my stomach is gone. Wow. I just had to adapt. And, you know, and I had a great team of practitioners. Like I had to go through a psychologist, a doctor, a surgeon, a physiotherapist. They had to decide whether I was ready, because it's a massive psychological adjustment. And that was the thing I underestimated, even with that circle of care. I was like, shit, like that doesn't just change how I see myself. I don't just, you know, I'm not just magically better just because I've lost all this weight. It's just like, there, if anything, it just heightened this disconnect in some ways. I managed to get some of myself back. So like, I'm more comfortable. I run workshops on the regular now, and like if you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I would have just been like, are you fucking kidding? Like I could not do something like that. It's public speaking. Granted, I only do public speaking stuff when it's stuff I know about, so I feel more comfortable just winging it. But like, yeah, just things I wouldn't have thought completely unfathomable to do, I can now do. And like, you know, just finishing a master's as well, you know, that's something I didn't feel ready for a long time. So yeah, so it's always a struggle to just remember like, hey, I've come a long way from where I was, but like, hey, it's not smooth sailing here.
It's interesting how like this is the intention of what we're doing with this, is that imagine you were doing this 5 years ago and actually physically saw where you were at.
I don't know how I would have answered that 5 years ago. Like, I think everything would be lower. I think everything would just be lower in a lot of senses. So the wheel is definitely fatter, if that makes I get thinner and the wheel's fatter. So
well, that's the goal.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
so
it's the trade-off.
But yeah, the work in that sort of personal domain, like they do kind of. I rely on the friends and family to get me through the troubles with the work and health stuff.
Right.
And I'd like to be more self-sufficient in the work and health stuff, I guess. So that's what I'm aiming for.
And then, so to kind of wrap this up, if you were to say this is for lack of a, 6.5, if we were to say, all right, what do you reckon is one of these areas that you could probably increase by a point?
Yeah.
And what would that be? And what
I reckon health.
Hmm?
Because I've just started exercise again. I used to hate exercise, and I found a place where it's like just not a traditional gym environment. It's like halfway between personal training and squad training. They're called Flow, just to give them a shout out, because they're great. So I'm seeing a nutritionist / psychologist around eating habits and body image and stuff. And again, like men talking about body image, like it's just not a thing. Like. Well, it is a thing, but it's something that's been slept on for quite a while.
Yeah, put it aside. Because on the flip side, you got people who are obsessed with going to the gym.
Totally.
And it's like this, I don't know what the word is, but it's like a diversion of opposite of anorexia. It's
well, they call it orthorexia, I think. Like, and that really, I don't know if that's probably not it. It's probably not in the DSM or whatever it is, but like, at least in pop psych, I think they call it orthorexia, which.
Pop psych.
Yeah, so, like ortho meaning just like correct. That's a Greek word. Like it helps being Greek sometimes. Like I can read these words and just be like, that's about no surgery. Yeah. But so yeah, orthorexia is just that obsession with being like dogmatic, and being like really rigid, which again kind of comes from the same anxiety. And I kind of saw my disordered eating, which it was, because I used to binge, I used to just not care. But I don't drink or smoke or anything like that, so that was kind of my vice too. I concentrated it in one area. But to me, it just looks like different manifestations of the same set of anxieties that kind of feed all of us. So, and for men, talking about like, hey, I don't like the way I look, is I don't hear a lot of my male friends talk about that. And you don't really see it necessarily in the public sphere unless it's already buff people complaining about that they're not more buff, which is fine. Like everyone, like you do you, but in terms of just like, no, like I really struggle with looking in the mirror sometimes and just really not liking what I see and not feeling like I could be a good partner to someone or, that sort of stuff. It's hard to talk about publicly, but again, I'm in a social setting where I can talk about that stuff very freely.
Well, mate, all I can say now, there's been so many people who I know who would get so much inspiration from your story.
I hope so.
And it's a real credit to you, and thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And I think we might wrap it up here.
Sounds good.
And but thank you, it's been an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure's been all mine. Thank you so
and
much.
I look forward to following your journey.
I'm continuing this yarn.